Hey garden friends, welcome back to our Crochet Flower Designer series where I'm on a journey to help make your next crochet flower your first masterpiece. Now if you're new here, I'm Leticia, the designer behind Flawless Crochet Flowers and the Crochet Garden Experience Garden Club, bringing you our third video in our designer series. Now you might remember in the last video I mentioned we'd be creating 3 simple petal shapes next, and we will. However, I felt it was essential to first understand how to give those petals their backbone. So today we're diving into wireframing. Then in the next video, we'll be creating those petal shapes. Now I do have a video on this channel where I show you how to add a wire to your flowers, but this video will go in depth on how to actually create a backbone for the petals that will allow your flowers to bloom. Now let's talk about that masterpiece. Beautiful crochet flowers start with petals that hold their form, petals that don't just exist, but truly bloom. But sometimes we create flowers that just don't quite bloom as we imagine in our minds. Flowers with petals that fall flat or look more like floppy fabric than the beautiful blooms we had imagined. If this sounds like your petals and you're tired of crochet flowers that lack structure, this video is for you. Now, one of the biggest challenges for crochet flower designers is achieving that realistic 3-dimensional shape. Without the right technique, your petals can end up looking, well, like this. The lack of internal structure prevents the petals from holding their intended form, making them appear lifeless. But what if I told you there's a simple trick that can transform your floppy petals into sturdy forms, and they will hold up even without blocking them? A technique that adds an invisible backbone to your crochet creations, giving them the support they need to truly bloom. In this video, I'll show you how to add structure and stability to your petals using wireframing, so your crochet flowers can stand tall and proud. We'll cover how to select the right wire to help secure your petals for lasting beauty. Let's get into it. So why take the extra time to wire your petals? Well, there are some advantages. Now, as we've talked about before, wiring increases petal stability. Your petals will hold their shape even after handling them. It also enhances the shape, achieving a much sharper, more defined edge and curve. It improves realism and gives a 3D effect, adding depth and dimension to your flowers, and it also makes your flower more durable. Wired petals are less prone to damage and they maintain their beauty. Now let's get hands-on. We'll first need to gather our supplies, and you'll only need a few. First, you'll need some wire, of course. For crochet flowers, I recommend using 24 gauge wire as they're more flexible, but they're also sturdy enough to give your petals those backbone. The gauge of the wire is also important. A thinner gauge is great for delicate petals, while a thicker gauge will provide more support for larger flowers. It is important to use floral wire or jewelry wire that is either coated or tarnish free so that it doesn't rust or damage your flowers. And again, the gauge of the wire will depend on the size of the petal and how sturdy you want your petals to be. Then we have our thread. When it comes to thread, you want to choose something that complements the wire, both in color and texture. Now I use Sugar Rush thread, which is equivalent to a size number 12 thread, but I also use Aunt Lydia's thread, which is number 10, and it works just as great. You'll also need the most important garden tool, your crochet hook. For my petals, I use a 1mm crochet hook with my number 12 thread. I've tried many other sizes and found that this works best for me, but you can do your own testing to find the one that works best for you. Now, if you find number 10 thread or number 12 too small for you to work with, I would also recommend using a number 3 thread with a 3.25mm crochet hook, which is the D crochet hook. I've used this many times and think it's great for beginners. Now that we have our supplies, let's get started with the basic technique. We'll begin by creating a simple wire frame. First, we'll want to measure and cut the wire to the appropriate length, and this will depend on the length of your petal. Throughout the years, I've came up with my own formula as simple as using a wire that's twice the size of the petal that you desire. Now before we begin, there's a few tips to keep in mind. You'll want to crochet your stitches over the wire, ensuring even coverage. Make sure your stitches are tight enough to hold the wire securely, but not too tight to distort the shape. The goal here is to hide the wires, making them invisible. The second tip is to maintain tension and keep the wire secure within those stitches. And thirdly, you want to keep things even, at least for this backbone frame. Whatever you do on one side, you'll want to repeat on the other side. Keeping these 3 tips in mind will make sure your wire is secured. Now let's begin. Today I'll be using some craft wire, and I'm going to cut this to about 11 inches long. Now I went ahead and cut the wire previously before starting this video for time's sake. But here's my 11-inch wire that I'll be using to give my petal its backbone. Now let's begin making our chain, and we're going to measure as we go to see how many chains we'll need. So I want to make a petal of about 2 inches. So we're going to make about 18 chains, and this should do it. Let's see. There we go. That's 2 inches. Now we want to add our backbone. So we're going to add our wire. As always, we're going to lay our wire piece on our working thread, and then we'll make a slip stitch as normal. This has just locked in our wire. Now we're going to crochet around the wire and into the stitches to secure this wire. Now to cover our wire, we'll be using single crochets, and I think this is the best stitch to use as it keeps your stitches closer together, giving the wire more coverage. So we're going to single crochet all the way across the stitch until we get to the very last stitch. Now once we get to our last stitch, we're going to make 2 single crochets into the last stitch, and this allows us more room to bend the wire. So the extra stitch would cover the top of the wire once we bend it. Now after bending the wire, I make sure to squeeze it tightly to keep it together. Now here's where that third tip that I mentioned comes in. Whatever we do on one side, we'll do on the other side, and this would allow the backbone to be even. Now when we bend the wire at the top, this ensures that the loop is secured tightly so that the wire does not poke through the crochet at the top. Now if it does, you can simply just push it back down and secure it with a twist at the end, and I'm going to show you that as we finish on the other side. Now once we're done with the backbone, you'll want to make a slip stitch into the first stitch on the opposite side to close the petal. Making a chain 1 will also lock this in. And sometimes when we're crocheting, our wire tends to want to peek out at the top. And when this happens, you can simply just pull it down from the bottom and give it a twist to secure it. And that's it. I told you it was simple, a simple wireframing technique that will give your crochet petals the structure and stability they deserve. Now remember, this is just one technique, and there are countless other ways to experiment and create your own unique wireframe designs. So don't be afraid to play with different wire sizes and thread types. From here, the next step is to dive into creating the actual shape of the petals. I hope this inspires you to try wireframing and see how it can give your petals a backbone, allowing them to stand tall and proud. But we're just getting started on our journey to creating stunning crochet flowers. In our next video, we're going to dive even deeper in petal design. We'll be exploring 3 simple petal shapes that will unlock a whole new world of creativity. These shapes are the building block for countless flower designs, and I can't wait to share them with you. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and ring the garden bell for notifications so you don't miss the next video. And also be sure to share some love by liking and sharing this video. Keep blooming!